I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems.
Come together right now. Since we couldn't break into the music and the Beatles there, I just had to jump in myself. President Trump last night, the unity president. The media dumped out of him when he started talking. Well, MSDNC didn't go to him at all, and then they bragged about it because they're communist propagandists and not journalists at all. They're a filthy cable channel with too much corporate money who pay people like Rachel Maddow $30 million a year to not do the news. God, it's good to be a Democrat, huh? Jake Tapper, former Democrat Capitol Hill staffer, he worked for the lady whose son married Chelsea Clinton on Capitol Hill, and they heard him mention the border, and they dumped out of President Trump's speech because you can't have people talking about the border. That could lead to all kinds of terrible things about, terrible for the Democrats. Speaking of terrible for the Democrats, you see the gangs and gangs, thousands and thousands of Democrats marched in New York City yesterday on Martin Luther King Day to praise Hamas, a radical Islamic terrorist army that is hell-bent on the genocide of the Jewish people. And the Democrats were out in the street marching. They were marching in favor of Hamas. And the Houthis, let's not forget the Houthis. Hang on, Houthi. Houthi, hang on. They were singing out on the streets of New York. Pretty amazing stuff. And today, how many hundreds of Biden administration employees and officials are going to walk off the job today because they love Hamas and hate the Jews? What's with these people? These Democrats have gone completely crazy. Well, maybe they've been revealed as completely crazy people that they always were. But this is pretty amazing. They're walking off the job in Washington, D.C. in favor of jihad. They're jihadis. They love the jihad. They hate the Jews. Get those Jewish people off the planet Earth. Wipe Israel off the map. Like those Democrat members of Congress that put up Post-it notes over Israel on the world map in their offices because they hate the Jews. It's kind of an amazing thing. If you're Jewish and you're a Democrat, you should probably rethink this. It's like, hey, I was a member of the Socialist Workers' Party in Germany until they started trucking us away. But we've got lots of crazy for you today. And, of course, we had the caucuses in Iowa. That's the big story right now. And President Trump, with an overwhelming landslide, avalanche, historic victory. And it was something to see. And Vivek Ramaswamy, he dropped out of the race. And you heard President Trump saying nice things about Ron DeSantis, DeSanctimonious, and about Nikki Haley and about Vivek Ramaswamy. It's pretty amazing stuff. Nikki got some nice words about her last night, and Vivek some nice words about him from President Trump. The news media is waging a jihad, as we already know, against all Republicans and President Trump in particular. The front page of the Washington Post today, not a legitimate newspaper. The banner headline is Trump notches decisive win in Iowa. It's not quite a banner headline, but it's a near banner headline. Best's GOP field by record margin. DeSantis narrowly takes second, edging out Haley. And Vivek did so poorly that he dropped out of the race last night. But just below that is pressure is on to stop front runners march. This is Dan Balls, his real name. That's his real name. You are what you eat. Is he? Dan Balls, B-A-L-Z. He's a typist for the DNC at the Washington Post. Works for Dr. Evil over there, who owns the Washington Post. Pressure is on to stop front runners march. Now, that the pressure is on at the Washington Post and at CNN and at NBC and at the New York Times and at HBO and at Netflix because, they gave the Obamas, how much, is that still a secret? $60 million, we think, to the Obamas. And what have they done? They reviewed that script where the Teslas crashed into each other and that movie about the apocalypse in America, because they hate us and they hate all of humanity. They're the left. They're not liberals. They're the left. So we got that going. And so many wacky things, so many wacky things. I've got to tell you, just in the last 21 hours since last week convened, extraordinary stuff going on. And I've got a whole bunch of it for you. Oh, speaking of that Barack Obama apocalypse movie, Barack and Michelle Obama, both executive producers in that movie. What is it? Leave the World Behind? Sounds like a dramatic high school girl's suicide note. Leave the world behind. And it kind of was, that movie. And they got the Teslas crashing into each other, which makes me laugh a little because there are stories out today that in Chicago, where it is a bit chilly, kind of nippy, there's a nip in the air. And it's so chilly that the Teslas all died. Well, not every one of them, but pretty much every one of them. All the Teslas died. It's too cold to charge your Tesla. And people sitting there waiting for the charging stations to charge their Teslas, and they all died. They just died. It's kind of like that sci-fi movie with, Barack Obama. He's the new Rod Serling. I apologize to Rod Serling. That was just a bad joke, just a terrible joke. He's not the new Rod Serling at all. But we've got that going. All kinds of whack-a-doodle-doo. President Trump, big win in Iowa. And now the rest of the field is running for various corners of the room. And I can tell you where they're going. It's public record now. Ron DeSantis is headed right to South Carolina. He's planning on winning South Carolina. That's where Nikki Haley is from, and he wants to do well in South Carolina. And in the meantime, Trump and Nikki Haley are headed to New Hampshire, which is a small state, isn't it? And they're headed there because that's where the next big contest is. And President Trump coming out strong, big time, breaking records, smashing records, the Iowa caucuses. And the Associated Press, the AP, that was one of the early abbreviations that we adopted, the AP. The Associated Press, they called it for Trump 31 minutes after the process began, 31 minutes after it opened. And there were people at the caucus sites, and they were giving speeches and talking about why they favor this candidate over that candidate. And everybody's phone, lights up at the same time. Hey, the Associated Press has called it for Trump because the filthy, rotten, corrupt news media, led in this case by the Associated Press, but then it was led by CNN, the dirty, rotten, filthy, corrupt Jake Tapper, Democrat, Capitol Hill staffer media. They dump out of Trump's speech when he starts speaking because they hate so much. That's the thing about the left, is they hate everything and everyone. And then when they get around to, killing people, then they're real good at that. But it is, keep in mind, this is the left. They're not liberals. And the Associated Press called it 31 minutes in, oh, Trump won. So what do you do now? You're caucusing in Iowa. You're sitting down. You're settling in. People are giving speeches about why they prefer Donald Trump or why they prefer Vivek Ramaswamy. And boom, it's over because the Associated Press said that it's over because they mess with our elections in myriad ways. It's extraordinary. About 100,000 people showed up for the caucuses, and the weather was something of an obstacle, but these are hardy American people, the people that fought the Battle of the Bulge, not these bunch of pansies prancing around New York in women's underwear saying, yay, yay, we love Hamas, F-F Hamas, F-F Palestine. I want to, they love to say free, free Palestine at their chants. I got a different bumper sticker. It's kind of like FF Palestine. It's similar to Free, Free Palestine, but different because I've had just about enough of lefties in the United States. And again, the Biden White House people walking out, no sense of irony, trading emails with friends, or text messages rather, with friends this morning. And you've got the White House staff and Biden staff people walking out. They're walking out off the job today to protest in favor of Hamas and the Houthis because they're mentally ill. We should turn them all over to Hamas and the Houthis. I don't know, how many do you think we could get on a C-17 transport plane of these protesters and bring them over to the Gaza so they could be introduced to their friends? I think that'd be good. But they're walking out in protest in favor of Hamas. The White House staff walking off the job to protest in favor of Hamas. It's kind of ironic, you know how I like to say they have no sense of irony because they have no sense of irony. But on Saturday, the same White House staff had to be evacuated from the White House by the Secret Service for their own safety because there was a violent mob of pro-Hamas criminals outside the White House attacking the White House. And the Secret Service decided that they were in physical danger. They were in grave danger. Is there another kind of danger? They were in grave danger, and they had to be evacuated for their own safety. Today, they're going to walk off the job in favor of the savages that would murder them because they are Jonestown in the modern world. You know, the Jim Jones and Guyana and Oakland, California, and San Francisco, the suicide death cult. And the Democrat Party they're kind of Jonestown 2.0. Everybody likes to say 2.0. It's the second go-around with Jonestown. These people are insane. So they're walking off the job, and there are Republicans in Congress who are saying that all the lefty, radical, pro-terrorists, Biden administration people that walk off the job should all be fired, which sounds like a pretty rational idea, I've got to say. You remember the air traffic controllers, or maybe you don't. When Ronald Reagan came in as president, they were striking, and he said, well, you can't shut down our air system, our aviation system. You're all fired. And that was a good thing to do. That was a great thing to do by President Reagan. And Biden, he doesn't have the backbone. He's a jellyfish. But he should fire every damn one of these communist jihadis that walks off the job today. And it shouldn't just be a snow day anyway. They all stay home. I think isn't the federal government closed today? So how do you have a walkout when the federal government's closed because we got an inch of snow? What's up with that? Again, if this were the Battle of the Bulge, we'd just surrender and learn to speak German because the Democrats are in charge now and they're not on our side. But really, I hadn't even thought of that until I just said it out loud. If the federal government's closed today, how do you have a walk? They have to reschedule for another day to walk off in favor of Hamas and the Houthis. These people. Let me tell you. So I've got some CNN for you. I've got some MSDNC for you. And of course, I've got what's really going on because they don't tell you. If you depend on them for your news, you have no idea what's happening in the world and in the United States because, you know, Democrats. But honestly, can we just airlift these people? Maybe instead of Gaza, we should send them to Yemen. We could put them all on C-17, big heavy lift aircraft, fly them nonstop, maybe refueling in flight to Yemen, and push them out the back off the ramp with parachutes. I don't mean to fall to their deaths. They could, you know, live until they hit the ground and then be handed over to the Houthis, who they're in favor of. These people. Can I say these people, Michael? Is that okay? Can I say these people? I'm telling you. Yes, sir. So we've got that. We got a bit of that going on and a bit of this. Yeah, CNN cuts away from Trump victory speech because he mentioned the border. And they say, we can't talk about the border. CNN has a prohibition against that because they're not journalists at all. The Associated Press calls Trump the winner 31 minutes into the process, which was just getting going because they're filthy, corrupt, and they think they got it first or something. You know, hey, we were right. Shut up. You're fired. You're all fired. And the media is having a great time with all kinds of polls, and so will we. 68% of Republicans during entrance polling, that's like exit polling, but it's when you're going in instead. That's for Democrats. Entrance polling, 68% believe Biden didn't legitimately win the election. And that's got the Democrats wanting to secede from the union because they're mentally ill. Hamas, speaking of which, you know, they're still holding American hostages. It's day 100. Joe Biden doesn't care. Now, he's given billions of dollars for hostages in the past, but that was to Iran because he loves funding terrorism because he's not on our side. But they put out a video with 3 hostages, and they're playing a little game, and maybe they'll murder them on video because They're terrorists, but the Democrats back them by the thousands out in the streets. They're going to walk off the job today, if it weren't a snow day, to protest in favor of jihad. Yeah, 100 days of American hostages being held, and the media doesn't care, and the Biden administration doesn't care, but they're pretty much the same thing. Meantime, Martin Luther King Day being commemorated by marching in favor of terrorism and Hamas and the Houthis. Pretty amazing stuff. Got that coming up for you. New York City collapsing under the weight of the illegal aliens there, and that's a good thing. Isn't that what Martha Stewart used to say? And that's a good thing. Then they sent her to prison for things that the Bidens do on any Tuesday, but never mind that. Yes, sir. The White House targeted by swatters, swatting, which the Democrats invented, and now they're very angry when anyone else does it because they're mentally ill. Funny Tesla. Oh, Anthony Fauci and the lab leak for the Wuhan Red Death coming up. Come on, Miss America, the Emmys. I got everything. We're at 888-630-9625.
Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit chrisplantcruise.com.
The Democrat Party is anti-American. It's kind of sad. They call everybody racist. What do you hear? I'll point out how racist these racists are, as they call people racist for not being racist. And stop looting. Stop shooting people. Let's take a phone call. Let's go to Sue, calling from Damascus, Maryland. Sue, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I have family in Iowa, and we've been talking for the last few days, and they said they're going out in, I think it was minus 14 degrees to go to the caucuses last night and caucus for Trump because of this reason. Mm-hmm. The reason is, well, number one, they all think that Biden's election was stolen, but that wouldn't get them out. What got them out was the fact that last week or a few days ago, Trump called for the most massive deportations this country's ever seen. And they said they're tired of people saying we have to secure the border. We have to close the border. They want deportations. And when Trump said that, it spurred something in a lot of people out there, and they want these fugitives from justice or illegal aliens. They want them out of the country. And they want the border sealed, but they want who's here out. And
Sue, it's a great and an important point and a great and an important consideration. It's kind of the opposite of closing the barn door after the cow's gone. They're all in here already. That's not when you seal the border. All right, big goings-on in Iowa last night, and corrupt media throwing a hand grenade into the punch bowl because that's what they do when it comes to Republicans. Democrats, of course, they're, bare naked fluffers in bikinis, and that's the men. Getting weird out there, isn't it? But let me go. I see we've got a friend on the phone calling from Des Moines, Iowa, which was the epicenter of the American political universe last night. Let's go to Rick calling from Des Moines, Iowa. Ricardo, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Rick.
I want to tell you the way the media is portraying Trump's win is really underreporting. We have 99 counties here in Iowa. He won all but one. And the one county he didn't win, he lost by one vote. The register's reporting 1,270 votes for Trump, 1,271 votes for Haley. But the thing is, Haley's campaign took a page out of the Democrat playbook. And I don't know if this is the first caucus year or not, but they allowed Democrats to change their affiliation at the caucus site and Clive, Iowa, which is a suburb of Des Moines, a affluent suburb, they reported that 50% of the participants in that precinct caucus were Democrats who changed their affiliation for the vote.
Yeah.
And Haley not only endorsed it, but encouraged it.
Well, I saw that there are the 99 counties in the state of Iowa, and President Trump won 98 of those counties. And you're absolutely right. The one county that he lost by one vote, by one single vote to Nikki Haley, and the change registration.
Right. That's Johnson County. That's where that's Iowa City. That's the University of Iowa. And I can't believe that there weren't crossover votes there.
Right. And it's, that's the college town, and you'd expect that to be, libs on fire. But listen, Rick, you're in Iowa, so you're in the college location of the University of Iowa. The President Trump loses by one vote. That's a solid state, my friend. That isn't good. And you're right that they love to tamper with things like voter registration, last-minute voter registration, and they love corrupting our system of electing leaders. It's the left. They're the left. They're not liberals. They're not on our side.
We call them communists.
We call them communists. That cuts right through it, right to the point. Honestly,
there you go.
It's a mad world out there, Rick. And I got to say, Trump wins 98 out of 99 counties, and the one county that he loses is by one vote, and it's the college town. You're still rock solid there, Rick. Chris, I live in Washington, D.C., so what do I know? But that is great stuff.
You're rock solid. You're rock solid, too, and I enjoy your show and the Right Squad, and I think of you as the Neo Joe Pine.
The Neo Joe Pine.
You know who Joe Pine is?
Joe Pine. Share with everyone the Joe Pine story.
Well, he was a one-legged talk show host back in the late 50s who he had a talk show and he'd have guests on, and he didn't suffer fools gladly.
Joe Pine. Well, I'm going to try to keep both my legs, but beyond that, I'll take that as a nice comment, a nice compliment. And Rick, thank you.
You're up there. You're up there with John McLaughlin and Gronsky, all the greats.
All the greats. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. God bless. Have a great Iowa day. It's a little brisk, a little chilly there today. I was texting with my brothers in Chicago today, where it's 27 degrees below zero in Chicago. They woke up to 27 degrees, but that's with the wind chill, but 27 degrees below zero, which is nippy. Can you say nippy? I think you can. So we've got that. Thank you, Rick. Good stuff. And the media, I'm going to get to the media. And once again, just in 21 hours, the left, the Democrat Party, has given me more than I could possibly make fit into a 3-hour bag. A 3-hour bag? Yeah, a 3-hour bag. Let's go to another phone call, Michael. Let's go to Sylvie. Let's go to our old friend Sylvie, calling from Waldorf, Maryland. Sylvie, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hola. How are you?
Very well. How about you, Sylvie?
Great. So, I watched coverage last night on CNN starting at 6 p.m.
What?
Which I never do because CNN is never on in this house, but Jay is back from college, and he likes Jake Tapper, so I obliged, which is fine. Learned a lot from the coverage, very entertaining. And first, obviously, you mentioned the polls, the entrance polls, and David Chalian presented, and how overwhelmingly they were for Trump. I was surprised that they actually went with the polls that early, and questions such as is Trump fit for president, even if he's convicted of a crime? 63% said yes, he is fit to be president. So Jake Tapper, his eyeglasses almost fell out when he saw that. But the other thing I noticed well into 8 o'clock was that Dana Bash was in a panel with Chris Wallace on location in Clive, Iowa, and President Trump was in the background at that time. He was on stage. Caucus goers were in the middle of, caucusing, and they were listening to him, and the thunderous applause that you could hear from the people present was amazing. And you could see that Chris Wallace was fidgeting. He was always looking towards the stage. The panel was live to see what Trump was saying and doing. But then the one thing that Dana said, which surprised me too, was she says, this is all crystallizing for me right now. She says that Trump doesn't have to say, I will do this as president, because he's done all of those things as president. So when she said that, Chris Wallace almost fell out of his chair. I mean, he was just fidgeting. You could see he was wringing his hands, Chris. You could have Piercy pull up the video. It was amazing. And then he said, no, the indictments, he's in court tomorrow. January 6th, da-da-da. So it was fun to watch, I have to say. It was great to see MSNBC, as of this morning at 7 a.m., they were still putting Trump as, quote, projected winner. I was watching Joe and Mika, because I do for the Real Housewives of WMAL, so they don't have to watch, right? I couldn't believe it. I said, just say that he's the winner. It's 7 a.m. on the next day,
They only had 99%. They only had 99% of the vote in.
Right. It was
normally they call it with like 12% of the vote. The Associated Press called it with 0% of the vote in, I think, last night, 31 minutes after the beginning, the 7 p.m. start, the go time for the caucuses. And AP called it. Dana Bash, of course, her ex-husband, Jeremy Bash, was an Obama administration official, one of the guys that signed on to that felonious 51 letter. And Chris Wallace, he gave up the ghost long ago, didn't he? He just decided to go for the paycheck. And he got a heck of a paycheck, because they hired him for millions of dollars with a no-cut contract for CNN Plus, and then CNN Plus folded in about 20 minutes. So they're trying to find places to plug him in. And our media, I don't know if you've heard this, our media, Sylvie, is the most corrupt institution in America. and the most insidious power they have is the power to ignore. And that was on parade last night, wasn't it? I mean, they're just corrupt. And Dana Bash, you're right, it's a funny thing. And it had you slack-jawed last night, because Dana Bash said something that's obviously true. President Trump, everybody running for president makes promises. President Trump makes promises. He said he's going to do what he's already done as president. Therefore, he's got a lot of credibility, right?
Amazing. No, yeah, Chris Wallace just did not want to hear it. He wanted to go to a commercial so bad at that point, I'm sure. And the other thing I saw on Twitter, now X, is that President Trump wore a white hat on Monday that said Trump Caucus Captain on it. And all over Twitter, people are upset that why is he wearing a white hat? These are signs of KKK, white supremacy. I mean, they're going there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. The idiocy. When will it end?
Never. No time in the near future. And, anybody without their head jammed into their own dark and remote location, sitting there and listening to this, might point out that the Democrat Party created the KKK, that Joe Biden worked with the exalted cyclops of the KKK, Senator Robert Byrd, the Democrat from West Virginia, that, you guys love to talk about white supremacists because you wore the word racist down to a nub, calling everybody racist because you didn't support the radical left-wing extremism of Barack Obama, who's an anti-American who was mentored by a literal member of the Communist Party as a young man, and then made Communist Party voter the CIA director, and brought in Van Jones, a self-described communist. It'd be nice if they had somebody on there that had something to say other than right? Now, Michael is making faces at me now, Sylvie, because he's been working that Michael Piercy magic with the keyboard clacking away. And here is Dana Bash from last night, as you described.
This sounds so basic, but listening to him, it's crystallizing in my mind that All the other candidates are saying what they would do. He gets to say what he did do. And he's going through a litany of all of the things that he did when he was president that people in this room love.
And that's pretty amazing. She observed the obvious, and she said it out loud, which could get her fired from CNN because you're not allowed to report things that are true. Everybody's talking about what they will do. He's talking about what he did do. And that is as obvious as the nose on, honestly. And and then Chris Wallace was sitting there, and we can't show you the look on his face on the radio, but as described by you, Sylvie, Chris Wallace.
I completely agree with you, and it's interesting. He's not, at least the part that we heard so far, he's not talking about 2020. He's not talking grievance.
Although I just heard somebody scream, "You didn't lose," but continue.
Well, then you can't help the audience. But I mean, he was exactly saying how much better the country was when he was president than it is now.
And that's because it's true, and he can say that, and you guys should say it too, and you should show what the economy was like and what gas prices, what food prices and grocery store shelves, and no war in Europe and no war in the Middle East, and the Houthi rebels were not a part of anyone's lexicon. And the world was a much better place just a few years ago before the racist Joe Biden took over. And why is he racist? Well, I'll get to that because they talked about that on the media last night too, and I want to share that with you. But the white supremacists and the racists and everybody's. And again, this is the party of the Confederate States of America, the Democrat Party, of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the party of Jim Crow, the party of standing in schoolhouse doors. Why Republicans on Capitol Hill don't constantly beat them over the head with these fun facts, I just don't know. Oh, yeah, it's because they couldn't message anything to save their lives, but they could just listen to my show. They wouldn't even have to pay me millions of dollars. You guys can use these lines. They're all true. You can look them up. Yeah. You have access to the Google or something. That's pretty amazing stuff. But wait till you hear Sylvie. I've got more CNN for you, and I've got more MSDNC. We haven't played any, but I've got MSDNC for you as well. And again,
great. On to New Hampshire next week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Ron DeSantis, and I've got the numbers. I haven't even gotten into the numbers yet, but the numbers are pretty dazzling. And the polls that were asked, the media is there to smear the people of Iowa. They're there to smear Christians. They're there to smear white people. We have that racist Joy Reid, who's an anti-Christian bigot as well. She's a racist bigot, and NBC News pays her millions of dollars because they love racist bigots at NBC News because they're lefties. That's the thing about them. Is they're not liberals, are they? They're lefties. Amazing, amazing stuff. And what do people care about? What do the people of Iowa care about? They were asked about that as well. Again, President Trump with 59% of the vote. Let me go with this. With 51% of the vote in Iowa. DeSantis with 21.2%. Nikki Haley with 19.1%. Vivek Ramaswamy with a drop out of the race, 7.7%. But if you add up the totals for DeSantis, Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy, President Trump got more than all three of them combined. I think that's a fairly sound win. And what do people care about there? And of course they polled people. White, born again, or evangelical, because the press is racist and they're anti-Christian bigots. Saying it's important, an important quality in a nominee. How many Iowans said being mentally fit is an important qualification? I've got that coming up, and it's kind of a surprising number a little bit. All kinds of numbers. And then the Democrats walking out of work today, the Biden White House people in support of the jihad because they're mentally unwell. Thank you, Sylvie. Great to hear your voice. 888-630-9625. Now, I don't have all the time that I'd like to get into the audio of the news media right here, so I'm going to wait until the top of the hour, after the top of the hour, to get into all of the wackadoodle-doo, left-wing, radical extremist, looting, arsonist media. You know, it's our media. And, gosh, there's a lot to say. The New York Times, takeaways from the Iowa caucuses, Trump's runaway victory, and more. And then, of course, they dump all over because Trump's runaway victory, because they're the filthy, rotten New York Times. So that's what you'd expect from them, isn't it? Yes, it is. Man, oh man. All right, let's take a phone call. Let's go to Ross, calling from Olney, Maryland. Ross, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you. I wanted to mention something that happened the end of last week when Liz Cheney was on The View.
Uh-huh.
I think what she was doing actually was auditioning for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
She's going to be on there after her defeat and his election.
Looking for her next career, and she might fit in perfectly with The View, because that is a sexist show, right? They don't have men on. They have only women on because they're sexist, and Pound Me Too and all that stuff. And Liz Cheney has betrayed Donald Trump in particular and the Republican Party more broadly, and that means she won big points with the American media, right?
Correct.
Because they love a Republican that is a turncoat, like, for example, Joe Scarborough on MSDNC. The View is an ABC. Interestingly enough, The View is actually under the umbrella of ABC News, and they're paid by NBC News. They're employees of NBC News. So Whoopi Goldberg, with all of her mental issues, she is a journalist, in effect, for ABC News. Extraordinary. And look, I don't doubt that for a moment, Ross, that they're looking to hire a Republican betrayer.